Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels and the Fourth World Book Club. Sean's doing some exercise. He pulled out the omnibus, and that's as good as doing just deadlifts. Mark is here, and we're joined this month by with Jimmy Gaspero of Comic Book Yeti and the writer of still upcoming, right? Penny and the Yeti.
Yeah,
Or did it
it'll,
come
it'll
out while I wasn't looking?
now it'll be out April 21st and in
Okay, so.
bookstores and the 22nd in comic book shops.
Yeah, so like n not next week, but the week after.
Yeah.
Yeah, week after next. Um, so I highly recommend that book, even for Mark and Sean, even though they're not exactly the age group that it's geared towards. Uh,
What are you saying? I'm
but
old?
well, I mean it's not even young adult, it's middle grade, and middle grade really means like fourth through eighth. So I mean it's geared towards like 10-year-olds. Do you want to be that young? Because I'll call you that young. We'll get you some Blues Clues.
I
I
mean,
love me some
I
Blue's Clues.
I did
Okay.
just download Condor Man.
That's true.
So
I actually may have also just bought Condor Man on your recommendation.
Now, why
So
isn't
we
Condor
are
Man on Disney Plus? That's the question.
we are wrapping up our um journey through Kirby's Fourth World with Hunger Dogs here. Um, before I throw it to the experts, I'm gonna give like I've taken to giving my off the cuff opinion right off the bat, and like last month, um, I so wish that he'd like given this level of care and thought to all of it. I understand that he was more rushed when he was doing the stuff in the 70s versus the two wrap ups in the 80s, but like these last two, that second story last month that I can't remember the title of it right now, and then Hunger Dogs, like
I think it's Even Gods Must Die.
yeah,
yeah, even Gods
Yeah.
Must Die and Hunger Dogs, I mean, I still wish that he had a scripter slash co-plotter just to tighten things up a little bit, but overall the storytelling is just so much better. And that's not even really to knock. It's always been good storytelling, but this is like next level storytelling. Um, it shows you why Kirby is the king in a way that I feel like so much of what we read up until this point hinted that he could be, except that he was moving so fast and taking no help that like you'd see a page of it here and 3 pages of it there. And whereas these two volumes have just been outstanding. I've really enjoyed them. So,
I defer to our guest first. You get
ah,
the first word.
Oh, I
ah,
do. Okay.
oh, Jimmy
So
has to go. We're putting you on the hot seat,
uh,
Jimmy.
is this just like my overall thoughts?
I mean,
Whatever.
Okay. So
The
I
book
went.
club. You could fill your wine glass and tell
All
us
right.
about your kids.
So I read the Fourth World Saga a while ago, and I went back and for this reread even Gods Must Die and Hunger Dogs to refresh my recollection. And I hadn't delved too much into like the history of what was going on when these were being made, other than recognizing that there was a pretty big gap in time of maybe a dozen years between when the Fourth World wrapped up and when Kirby did both of these. And I really like even Gods Must Die. It's probably one of my favorites out of the entire Fourth World. Um, Hunger Dogs is a little bit more like hit or miss for me. I think there are some sequences of it that really work, and I wish there were more of, because like it, the the scenes with Isak I think really work like well, but I feel like there isn't enough of it. It feels a lot of the Hunger Dogs feels like Kirby is jumping around to try and wrap up as much stuff as he can. And then also when I went and did research some of the history and realized that like he had a bigger plan, it's hinted at in the afterword by Mark. Um,
Mhm.
but he had a bigger plan, but then there were certain things he couldn't do because of the superpowers toy deal with Kenner. And it made a little bit more sense as to why the story felt a little disjointed to me. But yeah, there are some sequences in it I really, really love. I just wish there was more of like that stuff. Um, but it's very interesting to think about this as like a wrap up to it, and Kirby, what he tried to do or what he really did accomplish with the fourth world, and now I think he's like in his mid to late 60s when he's wrapping up with the Hunger Dogs, and I think of like the Forever People and what kind of a great group of like hippie superheroes they were. And now the only bit of like the young generation is Isak, and he was like Metron's like assistant and apprentice, and now he is disfigured and warped and building things like machines of destruction for Apocalypse. And I'm like, God, that is such like a uh it seems to be such a much more like cynical view of the younger generation than we see in Forever People. So those were the things that stood out to me going back now and reading even Gods Must Die and then Hunger Dogs.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's a little disjointed. Um, I enjoy it, uh, but reading that, basically, I think he wanted to end everything. And DC was like, well, no, 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 don't end everything. We might want to use these people again. And so I think that was a push pull about him wanting just to end it all. I mean, I feel like if he could, this would have been the end of the new gods, and we'd spin out some other gods, you know, uh, just as the old gods died, now the new gods died, and then there'll be even newer gods. I don't know, but that's what I got
The
the
new
sense
gods,
of.
the next generation.
Yeah. Um, but it does skip around a bit, like particularly the thing that got me most was all of a sudden Orion has rescued Tigra. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
When
I
did that happen? Yeah.
and that's in like three panels. I'm like, come on, that's a major storyline here. Uh, or it should have been, could have been. Uh, so that was a little disappointing, but I love, the art kind of goes back and forth. The coloring is um kind of throws me off a little bit.
I mean, I think in
It's that
the version that I read, it's clearly a modern recolor that some of those are better than others, and this one I think doesn't qualify as one of the great ones.
right. Well, it's definitely that 80s, prestige, palette.
Yeah,
It's not quite the four color of the 70s.
right.
Um, but
Well,
sometimes it serves it and sometimes it makes it look very flat, I think.
hmm
But I don't know. The art is he's getting Kirbier and Kirbier.
well, I missed Mike Royer on the inking deeply. You know, I think that when he found Royer to work on those New Gods books, he found the perfect inker for him. And I think that there's a number of things. Like I'm looking at page 48 right here. There's a like Dark Side doesn't quite look like Dark Side to me in the art, and it's mainly because I think that lack of Royer just sort of took that angularity and made it part of it, and it feels like sometimes this is trying to smooth out some of that angularity, uh, the curbiness of it, Um, I guess, sorry, I had to jump off for half a second there, but and maybe I'm covering something that somebody's already said. If I do,
I
please
think you're
finish it up.
you're good.
Yeah, no.
Um, um, I I think Even Gods Must Die was a much cleaner ending to things. I do think, as Jimmy said, I know that this whole thing was happening. We gotta look to um, Jeanette Kahn, who brought Kirby back to do this graphic novel, and she was the one that made the deal to with Kenner to do the Superpowers figures and got Jack royalties from that. So while Jack maybe couldn't truly finish it, he was getting something out of that. And I was just thinking about reading the Superpowers book, which Jack wrote but didn't draw. So anyway,
I've got that
but
on my
I
can.
yeah. Um, but I do think I'm just going to echo everybody else. I feel like this jumps around so much, and that um, like a lot of times I'm like, oh, this is cool, and then we're off to something else. I think that it feels to me like New Genesis and Highfather all kind of become sort of like a footnote, you know. In a way, I kind of wanted Hyman to, I would have liked to have seen Highfather take more of the stuff that Hyman was doing, because
Right.
I felt like, and I know it feels to me like Hyman is Kirby's stand-in, but at the same time, I'm like, Highfather is supposedly the guy who raised Orion. I feel like and it is something that happens all through this fourth world thing, is that you kind of want to know what this relationship between Orion and Highfather is, and they never quite get there, you know? And it always that always bugged me a little bit. But I do think it jumps around a lot, and there's a lot of like trying to click a lot of boxes. And like I think I would say I did think Even Gods Must Die was a much cleaner, more direct ending. Um, I also liked one of the things about Even Gods Must Die. There was that lovely thing about Darkseid bringing his underlings back to life, and then they weren't quite the same, and there was a sort of loneliness to Darkseid that has kind of evolved, but then kind of is gone. It feels like somebody trying to connect dots. And I've said this all along. I never really felt like Jack knew exactly where this whole thing was going to go. And I think much like uh, any number of things we can talk about, like say the Star Wars sequel trilogy, if you know where you're going, it gives you a lot of freedom to get there, to take side roads and to go and do other things to get there. And I just feel like at a certain point, Jack has so many ideas coming and so many things that he wants to talk about that he never really quite settles on what does this whole thing supposed to mean, you know? And like the anti-life equation is just sort of gone, you know?
Well, and I noticed that there was like hints in this that there were other equations. That
Sure.
there was
Life
like
equation, right?
right
Yeah.
well, but not just the life equation. Like there was a point where you must know all the equations of the, and it's like
How have
I
we
had thought that the anti-life equation was strictly a MacGuffin type thing, and now we're acting like there's some sort of mathematical magic in the universe that you've ignored up until this point.
how have we
What are
got
the rules? How's that supposed to work?
yeah. How have we gotten this far into this conversation without mentioning the micro mark,
Yeah.
Yeah, which
which is
at first,
my name for now going on for Mark.
micro mark. It's weird because at first I was like, "What? Like, what are they describing? Like a weapon?" And it
Yeah.
seems like at times they are definitely talking about a weapon, but then they they, they describe it oddly at certain point in time because I think I don't know if it's Highfather or somebody else mentions the micro mark, and it sounds like they're talking about the current moment rather than a
Hmm.
specific weapon. Um,
See,
so I
I
wasn't
read,
sure exactly what
yeah,
that
no,
was a stand-in for.
And there was
I
like a
read the
forced perspective where I thought it might be like one of the figures in the foreground. I was like,
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I read the micro mark is like a layman's attempt at like high level nanotechnology where like we're putting together these little things that because they can do anything at a molecular level, you know, even though it's little and whatnot, it can cause huge amounts of damage because it takes its and it can replicate itself, blah blah blah. But both because he was imagining a thing that either didn't have a word or he wasn't using the word. And it's hard to know right there because nanotechnology really was something that became a bigger part of the zeitgeist in the mid 90s. Um, I mean, I remember a friend of mine doing a paper on it in high school because, like, if they get it down, it could be a game changer. If you can go in and reformulate a cell, you could use a nanobot to cure cancer just because it could go in and take the cancer cell and turn it into a regular cell, you know. Um,
Well, I mean, like, but that's always been. I mean, like, this is what we're talking about is sort of always been the genius of Kirby and sort of the Achilles heel of Kirby is this idea that he's going to throw out all these ideas and that when he's working with somebody who is a good uh, even editor, let alone writer, they can smooth that stuff out and make sure that we hit the beats that are necessary. Like I was during the course of this, I reread OMAC, uh,
okay, that's
which
right.
is probably the worst example of it. Like every book in that is like, oh, here's this incredible idea, here's this incredible idea, here's this incredible idea, and it never really amounts to anything, nor does it really add to the drama. You know, it's just idea, 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 and I think that you know, as much as I love Jack, that is the one thing. It's sometimes you really wish he had a strong editor who was just like, I get it. I get it. I know you want to you want to do what you want to do, but we have to clean this thing up and make sure that we understand what it is, you know?
Yeah, I more than once I found myself reading these, and all the more in these two volumes where again he gets away from his 4 and 6 panel pages they use so much for so much of the rest of the series where he's got more acting in these, a little less bombastic imagery, a little bit more acting. It makes me wish that like he'd taken Denny O'Neil under his wing and felt like he was just showing Denny O'Neil the path, but in reality had, this writer editor guy who could say, "Hey Jack, what if we did it this way?" you
well,
know.
I also think there's a very strong, speaking of editing, he definitely has an anti computer, anti technology, computerization, what do you call it? Mechanization bent.
He was way ahead of the curve on the
Right,
anti-AI thing.
right. And I
Yeah.
think that's very important in a very important theme in here. And it kind of goes back and forth. That again, had there been an editor, someone say, hey, elucidate this a little bit more, or, bring that out. But it's very important to him, obviously, in this. And you can see that it's probably, hey, I'm the older guy, these newer guys, it's all computers, and all, let's just do it the way I like to do it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you take all of the fourth world as a whole, you can see a lot of what's important to Jack. He seems to be trying to find the humanity in both like this epic good and epic bad, to kind of break them both down as no, there are good things from bad and there are bad things from good. And like, no matter what your gods are, they're not infallible, you know. He definitely shows an awareness of a technological future, but he's also shows an awareness that like that won't make the world perfect because you will still have humans, and how the technology is used is important. He certainly shows a lot. I mean, whether it's the is it the Flim Flam Man? What did Stan get? The funky
Funky
jazzy,
Flash Man.
Funky
yeah,
Flashman.
Funky
funky
Flash
Flash
Man.
Man. Whether it's funky Flash Man or any number of things, he shows like his struggles between like, okay, I understand that like some level of commercialism is required to, pay my mortgage, but I'm an artist and I want to be an artist. And like, I like, so I feel like Jack, if you look at the entire thing on a whole, there's a lot of Jack struggling with his own humanity and place in the world. But again, like, he's a great artist and an okay writer, a great storyteller, but not a very good scripter. And as a result, without having somebody to kind of bounce things off of, it becomes, and I get this really well. You guys get to watch me do it on a regular basis. He's thinking out loud, but he's doing it on the pages of four different comics over a year and a half.
Mhm.
Yeah.
you
Well, I mean,
know,
and
To to
go ahead.
talk more about the anti technology or maybe anti modernization of it. One of the things I found really interesting about the Hunger Dogs is the characterization of Darkseid in this, who also seems like if you're if you're if what you're espousing is kind of like an anti-modernization, let's say in the art form or the work that you've been doing, you have your main bad guy, Darkseid, who really seems to be chiding all of his new underlings for all of their new weapons and all their new designs. He really seems like not not thrilled with that aspect of it, like to the point
I
where
got my slingshot, damn it. Keep that gun
yeah,
away from
but
me.
and he even tells the one, if you can take this crowd control measure on a cosmic scale, you've ripped off the anti-life equation. And Darkseid seems annoyed by it. Like these new weapons of mass destruction is still not as good as like fear.
Right.
It's just a very odd characterization for Darkseid, how down he is on all these new weapons like that keep popping up.
I've always found Darkseid to be really interesting. I mean, it's like I was talking about in that Even Gods Must Die, there was that whole thing where he, you know, uh, resurrects Desaad, and it's not quite Desaad, and he seems somehow really sad about that, that like he's really lost all of these people who understood what he or at least were his team, and now we have a dark side that seems sort of floating. He almost seems like he's floating in a sort of meaningless void now, like that if he doesn't have, like, if it's all like we're going to unleash this bomb or like, and maybe it is that like control by fear is what he understands and what means something to him, and that wanton destruction doesn't seem to. Maybe that's what I'm chewing on right now, is like he seems turned off by the idea of just wanton destruction. He would rather control something that actually exists rather than just destroy it. You know what I'm saying? Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, that
I think,
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think
I mean,
there's also an element of old people know like change. So
Right.
he imagined doing it this way. So this young whippersnapper's like, well, you haven't been able to figure out the anti-life equation, but I created this thing that'll do the same thing. And he's like,
Hmm.
no, it won't, because it's not the same. But
Hmm.
it'll do the same. No, it's not the same.
Uh,
Well, I mean, yeah, it's sort of well that's sort of the well, that's the AI thing too.
Right.
It's like I can
Well, and I
in a
mean,
bunch of
to
prompts and shoots out a piece of artwork or whatever, but that's not the
right.
same as me drawing it
Well,
or
and to another level, an anti-life equation might be cleaner. It might be almost the infinity gauntlet snap and half the people are gone. Whereas what's being described here, it's like, oh, we're gonna raise the cities. There's nothing left. And that's,
Mhm.
any aesthetic is then gone. He doesn't want destruction. He wants anti-life. And those can be different.
Yeah.
I'm thinking out
No,
loud here. I do that a lot, Jimmy. These guys know that already.
I mean, I do think I think that all of these books really do make this case for Darkseid to be one of the most fascinating villains ever. Dare I say it? I think actually Darkseid in his deep down is actually more interesting than say your Thanos or whatever. Like there's something about that character. There seems to be like there is this element of like he is locked in battle with his own son, right? And that it doesn't go to say that Star Wars Resolution where the son redeems the father, nor does it like it just perpetuates that battle, you know, that it's this unending thing. But the one thing, and just to jump back a little bit, the one thing that I really missed in this that I think was to me very inherent to what we were talking about over the course of the whole fourth world. Where the hell is Scott Free?
Yeah.
Like
right.
this is like this pact that was supposedly this, I remember when we got to that issue of, the pact that was supposed to bring peace and yet didn't really work, but it was still this idea that they had changed the suns, and there are like Jimmy brought up the Forever People, and we always talked about when we were reading it how it felt like it was sort of meandering and never really found out what it was trying to say. But you know, we bring back Isaac, but like wouldn't it like which always felt like sort of a peripheral character to me, and then but but the Forever People are still wandering out there. The Infinity Man's still wandering out there. Like, and like this had been like you almost wish that he'd done like a trilogy of graphic novels
Right.
to really give himself the space to wrap all this up.
Well,
But,
oh,
go ahead.
I kind of get the sense that this several times because there's several splash pages in here that it made me think was like, okay, this was the break. This was going to be four different issues or
Right.
something. But I think the decision to set it entirely on Apocalypse probably is why, it A, probably why Scott Free and the others aren't on there, but it's also why it feels so different than what went before. Because we always had humans interacting and in peril, um, and the people he was trying to dominate, right? And in this, it's just Apocalypse, where we see, look, the hunger dogs, right? Uh, the the rabble, the I don't know, they're not humans, but they're the denizens of Apocalypse, right?
Hmm.
And they start to rise up, but it's not quite the same as when it's on Earth. Does that make sense? It just, which I understand why, hey, we've had the battle on Earth. Now we're going to Apocalypse to end it all, right? But it
Yeah.
does make a tonal
I
shift.
I want to correct myself. I had said that Mike Royer didn't work on this. It looks like he did, but there's also inking by D. Bruce Berry, and as I'm flipping through it, I'm like, there's definitely pages that I'm like, oh yeah, that's Royer, but then there's also pages where I'm like, that feels strange, and I'm assuming those are the Berry pages.
There's a dissonance because some of it feels very familiar and some of it doesn't. And I think
Right.
what I said earlier about the coloring, I figured it out. To me, the coloring reminds me of a picture book. Remember, we used to get the picture books in
Hmm.
middle school or elementary. Um, it seems more like that. Even you'd get a Spider-Man picture book, and it wasn't colored like a Spider-Man comic book.
Hmm.
That's what this reminds me of. Um,
I do want to talk about, there is one transition in this book that I puzzled over forever. And it's just because I think it's incredibly dissonant. And I don't know what page this is. There's no page number. It's when Hyman has the bomb and it disintegrates in his hands. And then we suddenly switch over to New Genesis and these monsters. And that transition still makes no sense to me. And I still am lost narratively of like I was like, wait a minute, did I miss a page? Was there a page missing here? Or what's also funny is that at least in my because I'm reading this on Kindle, the the aspect ratio of the pages changes.
yes, it does in the omnibus as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's because this was released as a DC graphic novel,
Oh
which has a
yeah.
different aspect ratio from a regular comic.
But
Um,
then why like that totally makes sense, except there's this series of pages that are not in that ratio. It's
well,
from
I
there's the
I
double
wonder if it has to
splash.
do with whether you're seeing one page or two pages.
Mm,
Well, here I'll hold this up. See, I mean, you can look at the difference in the margins. Uh,
yeah.
Fascinating for our podcast listeners.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
I
All of this
I
gutter at the bottom, and then
Right.
the next page, there's no gutter at all, really.
Right.
I thought
And
I
then
read somewhere that there were like 25 pages of this that they added back in for the omnibus. And I'm trying to
That
see
could be
where
it.
I read that, but I thought somewhere I had read that there were that there were some other pages that I don't think were ever in the original that when they did the omnibus they added them back in, which could explain.
that would explain a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see figure
Because
out where I saw
I
that.
re I remember when this book came out, and I was, I don't know, early teens, and I didn't know what the hell it was, you know. Um, so I never picked it up or anything. So I wish I had, just to be able to answer that question if there was. But I mean, even thinking about that, what you just pointed out, Jimmy, like if I take all of these pages that are in the larger aspect ratio and just remove them, it seems an even more sort
Yeah.
of like weirdly disjointed transition, you know?
It's in the afterword in the omnibus by Mark Evanier. I can never remember how to say Mark's last name. Um,
Even here. Yeah.
Evanier. Yeah, he says that talking about the construction of this, there were technical difficulties. The first version had been inked and lettered by Mike Royer. It had been done to
Ah,
conventional comic book format to be printed on pages the size of those in the book you're holding. A graphic novel, which is what the expanded version would be, has larger pages, different proportions to make the pages Jack had already done fit into the graphic novel format. Kirby did additional art to add into the margins. He also did the new pages, which were drawn to graphic novel proportions. Royer was unavailable at the time, so these were inked and lettered by D. Bruce Berry. And then in parentheses,
Ah.
it says, you should be able to tell which is which by the lettering, if not the inking techniques. And then the restructured story was colored by Greg Theakston. And then to tie the two batches of pages more closely together, because there was some problem with the photostats of the Royer inked pages, Theakston wound up re-inking and retouching a lot of the art on those pages. Um,
Ah.
but I was going to mention the same thing because we talk a lot about, we've already mentioned a lot about the story being like disjointed at times and there being a lot of ideas. You would think that, all right, like on my podcast with creators, we talk a lot about the economy of comic book storytelling. And that transition does seem totally bizarre because you don't need it to get into, like, if you want to bring Lonar in and what's going on New Genesis, you don't need that at all. It's just about some,
Mhm.
I don't know, plague infested monsters like gobbling up New Genesis. And like it's
Right.
one page, three panels, and even the narrative captions. Like you don't really need it to get into the other aspects of it. It does seem very, very
Oh,
strange.
when we start talking narrative captions in Kirby, there are a lot of them that you don't need.
My favorite
Fair.
Kirbyism, my favorite Kirbyism is the strange quotation marks around words that are like you're like, why is this in quotes? Like, and I don't have a good example in front of me, but it's been all through his work. I see it in his
The
70s Marvel books.
the first day
Yeah.
after
Like,
the
well,
gods
it's
were
like
born.
this is a ripoff, quote unquote, and I'm like, I do you, it 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 kind of strikes me. It kind of strikes me. Sometimes it strikes me as the old guy trying to use the hip lingo and thinking that he needs to like, and it's like, but at the same time, like sometimes it's just bizarre stuff, and you're just like, I don't know why you did that, Jack, and I don't know why the letterer didn't just say, I don't need this.
If anyone ever hosts a Jack Kirby like pub trivia night, that would be a great one. Just read a sentence, and the team has to figure out which word or two words is
In
in quotes.
quotation marks.
That'd be
Well,
incredible.
I say the biggest miss in all of this is the last page with Metron that doesn't have a header that says prologue.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So, we began with the epilogue and
Right.
to
yeah,
end because this is a prologue to what's coming next, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that just hit me when you were talking about something when I wasn't sure where you're going, and I was like, oh, yes. Reminded me of the epilogue.
Well, yeah, because in my play, I think it's Carmine when Jack's pitching it. It's like it starts with the epilogue, and Carmine's like, "Wait, the epilogue's at the end."
That's the end. But that's the first issue of New Gods.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, that is actually a really astute thing. That again, a really clued in and talented editor or writer would have been like, Jack, this is what we should do. And Jack, I could imagine Jack being like, "That's a great idea, kid." But
Which have we ever seen? Has there ever been a prologue? You know, we talked about when we were doing the series and we had that flashback to when the pact was made, how much we really wish we'd seen more of young Highfather and Darkseid back then. Has there ever done a series back then? I mean, I think that would, if anyone's listening at DC, I would buy that in a heartbeat.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I've always thought that, the only series that keeps seemingly keeps like I know they have attempted a New Gods revival. I think I
Even
think even
recently,
Yeah,
I mean they've
Oh
there was
yeah,
just
had
one
SB
right.
just did something.
yeah,
Yeah.
did
but
I
I
need
mean
to read it still.
I think in the early 80s, actually before this came out, I think that um, Denny O'Neil wrote a an attempt to revive the New Gods, and we know that Mr. Miracle's come back several times.
yeah.
And it's like we were talking about, like, man, somebody out there has to have a good pitch for the Forever People, like, but that doesn't seem to come back. There may have been one revival of that, but for
Giffen
me,
do that?
Giffen, maybe, I don't know. I wish I had an encyclopedic memory of that, but um, we need to get Mark Wade on this. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
cover looked like this," and the um, but I don't know. Like I think about all the people who have taken these ideas and expanded them. I know, Tad, you told me that your introduction to Darkseid and the New Gods was the Great Darkness War, and like
Right.
how successful that story is.
Hmm.
And I mean, like I have always thought, in the 80s when they did Cosmic Odyssey, I loved that series, and I thought, I didn't quite think that Mignola was the right artist for it, but at the same time, it's Mike Mignola. That's great. It's great art, but it just was a little strange to me. But I keep thinking about that. Uh, even the X-Men Teen Titans crossover book has a really interesting story. Have you guys read that, right?
I
Which
read
one?
Cosmic Odyssey, but I don't.
No, yeah, that one of the villains of the X-Men Teen Titans crossover that they did in the 80s uh is Darkseid and Dark Phoenix. And at the end, Darkseid tries to cross the source wall and ends up becoming one of the Titans that's embedded in the wall. And I always thought that was just this awesome idea, like that the arrogance of him trying to cross the source wall. Um, but and that's another thing. That's another bit of you know canon that is not in these books. Like Jack never addresses it. Like Jack didn't create the source wall or any of those things. I think it's fascinating. And when you go back and you read how Jack wanted to create all these books and then hand them over to other people, like how much we could have gotten out of it if that had actually happened, you know?
Oh. I was going to ask a question because Mark has done the Kirby um, research the most. Like, I feel like all of the Kirby I know, either he felt like he didn't have enough autonomy or he insisted on near complete autonomy. So he was either with Stan writing words that he didn't want or whatever, or he was, I don't want an editor, I don't want a writer. Is there anything where he did have that team that we talk about wishing he had here, where he had a writing partner
Well, there was
that
there was always
valued him as a storyteller, but
there was certain
Him and Joe.
Joe Simon, of course.
okay.
Through the 50s, they did they did the romance books, they did crime books, they did some of those horror books. I mean, and look, I think that,
I'm gonna go
Jack's
dig
pers
up more of those.
yeah, Jack's perception, I think the Lee and Kirby dynamic is always going to be interesting to try to parse out because I think
Right.
that Jack obviously at some point felt that it was an unfair situation. And there's definitely elements of it that are unfair. There's no way, but at the same time, I don't think you can deny that. I don't think that anybody can say that Stan Lee did not value Kirby's contributions to
Yeah,
the
no,
to the
I wasn't trying to I was
yeah, no,
speaking only of Jack's state of mind.
right.
Was there ever a time where he was with a collaborator that he was like really willing to take the, let's word it this way, or even just hand over the, this is the story we're telling, you script it and I approve it, whatever. I
I think
lost you
that
for a second.
it
Okay.
seems yeah, it seems to me that Jack, there always seems to be a problem at some point or another. There was, there was the Joe Simon situation where Joe Simon sued to try to get the rights to Captain America. And Jack signed an affidavit saying that they had created it as a work for hire for Timely / Marvel. And, some of the things that have been said was that Joe Simon tried to undercut Jack. Like he tried to get the rights all to himself rather, he wasn't suing for Jack, Simon and Kirby. He was suing
Right.
for just Joe Simon, right? And that in a way, that's why Jack sided with Marvel,
Right.
or Martin Goodman. Um, like, so it seems like as time goes on, everything you begin to realize this isn't fair, or somebody does something that's a slight, or I don't know. I mean, like it it seems that because I want to be real careful what I'm saying here because I love Jack and I think Jack is a stone genius and I think Jack is always going to be on the Mount Rushmore of comic creators
He's
forever,
also
right?
human,
But it,
and
it
and that's
also
part of what
seems
this
like
is all about.
he's also human, right? And I do think that there is you sign a deal and then the deal goes away, like when you sign a deal that's the same deal that everybody else gets, and then suddenly the thing becomes super mega popular or successful, then suddenly the deal that everybody gets feels wrong. And then and certainly it probably is, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but that's what everybody else got.
Right.
I think about like the one thing we can say about Kirby that is continual across his history is this return of the original art. And
Yeah.
certainly that is something where I'm 100% on Jack's side. And I think that it should have been like it should always be returned. But then again, you see these interviews with all of these golden age artists who are asked about that. And they're like, did you ever get your art back? And he's like, no, I didn't want it. Not Jack specifically, but other artists. Because they're like, what was I going to do with it? That this value of the art, and we've talked about this before, the value of the art did not really arise until there was this organized fandom and conventions and sales and those kind of things. And that then suddenly this stuff had value. And now, well, I do deserve it back. Well, yes, you do. But nobody was really asking for it back until now. And that does not change my feelings about the unfairness of taking it. That doesn't change my feelings about the unfairness of what absolutely happened with his Marvel art, where they put it in their warehouse and that there were people who were taking it out of there or being asked to destroy it or, any number of other things. But at the same time, like that was that was the standard operating procedure of the industry. And until somebody tries to change it or makes the case to change it, that's the way it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm being, hey, I've
No, I
talked
think
enough.
that's
Somebody else have a point.
Well, I mean, you put me in mind of Dave Chappelle's take on the Incredible Hulk. Seems like everywhere you go, you get into a fight. I'm starting to think maybe it's you.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the thing is like I think I mean, and I'd love to hear Jimmy's point of view on this too. It's like it does seem like last summer I went out to LA and I went to the Kirby exhibit at the what the hell was the name of that museum that out there? But they had a huge Kirby exhibit, lots of original art, lots of designs, things like that. And it's, they talk about these thousands and thousands of characters that Jack created, and absolutely true. But I think many of those thousands are just a sketch. And I do think that a sketch of a character is in the same way that Stan Lee talks about if you've got the idea, then you've created it. And that's not necessarily true. You have to have the artist put it into some sort of image and take your idea and make it, I don't want to say real, but make it, flesh it out, right? Into something that is a visual thing. And the same thing is like a design of a character that's on a piece of paper that has no context isn't really a character, it's just a design, right?
Yeah. I mean, just think about how many different people claim to have a hand in creating the Wolverine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
clearly Kirby.
Well,
Just ask what's his name, the guy that Mark always gets in fights about with.
Oh,
I
no. No.
no.
We're not gonna bring that guy up.
Yeah. I will say, I don't want to not mention this because I think it's very important. One of the greatest things about this book, I was so thrilled when I turned the page. We get a two-page spread collage, full-on Kirby collage towards the end with the destruction of New Genesis.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite page in this book. I
It's
love it. It's
just
one of my
gorgeous.
favorite pages, period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's one of the
beautiful.
things I wanted to bring up and talk about, like what everyone thought of it, because like going back from my memory of the Fourth World and, not having read it in a little while and then getting to that collage, I'm like, what is going on here?
I am such a huge fan of Kirby's collages. I mean, we did talk about it, how uh, when he used to do them in the Marvel books, they were almost always like black and white with
Right.
a color drawing of it. And the thing is like it's probably the advances in coloring and things like that into the 70s, is that once he got to the Fourth World, he could do these collages and that they could be colored. And that makes this pop. It is incredible. It is cannot I cannot gush more. I will say that when I went to that exhibit, this was one of the pages hanging on the wall,
Oh, wow.
and it
Oh,
was
that's awesome.
Hey, is that a Star Destroyer? The rear of a Star Destroyer from Star Wars?
where
Uh, just
I'm looking
the
at this
all
on camera.
apocalypse reels as its sister planet New Genesis
It
is blown apart.
it looks like it. Yeah, it's on the on mine. It's like on the left side of the page, almost
Yeah.
halfway down. Does
Oh yeah, I do
look,
see it.
does look like a Star Destroyer.
And actually, right to the right of that, is that the cockpit of a B-wing?
It could be.
Just to the right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely could be. It's
That it totally is a Star Destroyer. I totally missed that. That's incredible.
Well, I mean, that was his model for blowing up a planet was Star Wars. This has the feel of an Alderaan, so he
Yes.
was given the hat tip.
Well, I also do love also coming out of this page as New Genesis, the city there is flying off. Um, I don't know for certain, but this feels to me like things coming full circle Um, because to me, as soon as I saw that and that Highfather is looking for a place to land, um, it made me think of Jason Aaron's Thor run. And
Hmm.
uh, I thought, hey, it's coming back. Like Kirby's ideas from New Gods have now gone back to Thor,
Right.
right? Which
Right. I mean,
I
because yeah,
love.
that was, that was always the strong rumor was that, this all was supposed to be Kirby's continuation of Thor, that he wanted to wipe out all of the Thor characters in Ragnarok and then replace them all.
Right.
And
And with that, and I don't know if Tad, you've ever talked to Jason Aaron. I'd
I
love
have
to.
not yet. He's on the list. We've
Hey,
communicated a
the
couple
Southern
times, but he's
Bastards
writing a
TV
lot of
series
stuff.
is going with Kevin Bacon.
we're not
Yeah, I
going to
just
talk
saw
about the
that.
other guy. Yeah. I like the one series that I have always been like, why? I know he was a bastard, but could we not have finished this, please? I love that
Yeah,
series.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it is great. It is
I
great. Uh,
I have to finish
I
it still. I haven't finished
uh,
it.
So does
well,
I
Jason
it's
just
Aaron.
I
yeah,
just quickly shared my screen because I think I have a book that we may either want to throw in after Kree Skull Roar or throw into our pulp blotter at some point. That there is a best of Simon and Kirby that actually kicked off a series of Simon and Kirby books done by there's a horror book, a sci-fi book, a crime book,
hmm
um, done with the and it looks like a superhero book done with the approval of both of their estates and with a lot of handpicked Joe Simon stories.
yeah. I have the best of Mainline, which was their that was the uh, the publishing company that Joe and Jack started in the
Okay.
50s. It did not last long, but you know, eh, from my understanding, for all Jack's complaints about publishers, uh, they had pretty much the same policies that all the publishers they worked with when they became publishers.
Uh, um, one of the things I also had wanted to bring up in terms of the Hunger Dogs is the last time, and it's 3 pages before the end, but the last time we see Darkseid in this, I understand that Jack had wanted to kind of at least kill Darkseid and Orion at some point. But not being able to do that, I thought it was very interesting in terms of we see Orion with his mother and Becca like speed away, and we just the last two panels are we see like this encroaching white space, and Darkseid is like a little tiny like speck in that last panel. I thought that was very interesting for like a character that has occupied so much real estate throughout the fourth world that that's how
Mhm.
we see him at the very end of it, just moving away from him, the white space starting to like envelop him. I thought it created a very interesting picture for the last of Darkseid.
Well, I think
Yeah.
thematically it's super interesting because I think like and this of course is my own interpretation of what maybe Jack was trying to say and God knows if it's right, but like I said when even Gods Must Die, that idea of him bringing back all of these people who were gone and then feeling like they're not the real, you know, and that more and more isolated, more and more with less people that he could turn to, Granny's gone, Vermin Wunderbar's gone, Kalibak's gone, Desaad's gone, and all he has left is his command of this. And that I think probably like to me, it's like sometimes absolute power, it just leaves you alone. It just leaves you isolated from everyone else. And that that's where we leave dark side, you know.
So
Yeah.
is Jack Darkseid?
I think we know Jack is Hyman. Hyman looks like
Well, it
Jack.
looks like him,
Yeah.
but
I
talked
yeah,
about having absolute control, being left alone. All of his
that's true.
compatriots have gone.
Well, he always said that there was something of himself in all of his characters, so
I also love when you talk about the whiteout. Um, there's a few pages before that where all the characters in the foreground of this big explosion. It's the top of, I don't know. I don't have page numbers. Oh, it's the page before the collage.
right,
Yeah.
All the characters in the foreground are whited out instead of
right.
blacked out, which I thought is a fabulous visual. That when you mentioned that about Darkseid, it reminded me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there are, like I said, there are some really interesting concepts in this. Like, I was looking at Darkseid in terms of how we last see him, as if Darkseid with the anti-life equation is standing in as, you know, totalitarian or authoritarian governments. Um, and we now have gone from the early 70s to 1984, 1985, kind of like the height of the Cold War. Um, I was just like really trying to think of what Jack was like grappling with and what he was trying to say. Just that these types of governments, no matter how long they're around, like can't survive. Like the hunger dogs are always going to turn on you at some point in time, and you know, um, it was just kind of interesting in terms of the like the political ramifications. I thought of what he was trying to say about Darkseid and kind of reflecting the current moment and how things had changed from the early 70s to 1985 too. I was wondering how much of that was wrapped in with how he ended uh, that panel on Darkseid.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think also, like I think what you're saying about the change in the political situation from being like uh because I will never forget that father uh, my father was actually we were having a discussion after we saw Red Dawn of all things, right? And that
The
he was
historical documentary Red Dawn.
yeah, yeah, right. Um, but but he was actually we were actually talking about it. I was I think I was the day I was 13. I turned 13 and we went and saw Red Dawn because it was the first PG-13 movie that got released. And I thought that it came out on my birthday, my 13th birthday. So we went. But and I remember he was talking to me about it and he was like, like the big flaw in that is that right now the idea of amassing more territory doesn't make sense to anybody anymore. And we went through that period in the 80s. It was more about it was consolidating your power into technology and into more powerful weapons rather than trying to take over more and more space, right? That that people wanted to control what they had rather than trying, and I think that Darkseid, in a way, maybe this is it, because I do think that there is a shift in what we're talking about. Like, I think that the political shift in this book, that now I'm thinking about it, is where now we're only on Apocalypse, right? He isn't trying to take over Earth anymore. He isn't trying to, you know, uh, expand his power base. He's trying to hold on to what he already has with more powerful weapons and more powerful, violence and that in the end of the day, he is a relic, that he doesn't function well in this world that we're in now. And that he, maybe what Jack is trying to say, that eventually he's just going to be erased from what's left anyway. Maybe,
Yeah,
well, that's
that's
yeah.
No, I think that's an interesting. I think that's an interesting point. It does seem to allude to that in terms of how
Yeah.
he's left things with him. Um,
I will
uh,
tell you one other thing that I thought about when I was reading this. Uh, so one of the things that I thought about, sorry, I thought I heard my wife calling, um, is that I always think about the bugs who lived underground on New Genesis, right? Because that was also sort of the repressed underclass of New Genesis, and they are not mentioned at all in this. You know, the planet blows up. They decide they can blow up the planet and they'll fly away in Supertown. And we never talk about the bugs. You know,
Well, there
um,
are some skulls flying out in that
there
collage.
are, there are, and I think that's I mean, like, I think that probably was just I don't have time to deal with this element of it, but it did cross my mind.
huh. Yeah, they're not mentioned at all. That it is so odd the characters that he doesn't bring back for this.
Yeah.
You know,
And yet, we get this little scene with oh, what's his name? The horse guy,
Lonar.
Lonar,
Of the
who
hill people.
which Lonar of the Hill people. But yeah, because they like that, quite honestly, one of the more forgettable of the young new gods that we were introduced to. I mean, uh, at least in my mind, I mean, the horse is cool, yeah, but it's just interesting. Like, it's just really interesting the characters he does bring back and the characters he doesn't. Part of me, part of me thought that he brought back Lonar just because he wears Thor's helmet.
I
Well,
Huh.
mean,
we talked about odd transitions and who he brings back. There's that moment where Highfather and Lonar are talking, and you turn the page, and all of a sudden, Light Ray's just been standing there.
Yeah,
I had to
yeah.
turn back, and I was like, "When did Light Ray get there?"
I do like Light Ray's
Tuesday.
appearances in both even Gods Must Die and this. Like even Gods Must Die, Light Ray just shows up and he's like, "Hey, Orion, watch me reprogram this mechanized soldier into a bomb." And then this one he just shows up and he's like, "I'm just gonna break through the barrier of apocalypse." And then we last see Light Ray and Orion's just watching him go off into the distance, and Orion's just like, "That guy."
Oh, that Orion. Yeah,
I do
I
think,
mean, like,
Kirby's melodrama, how I think has always been very good at kind of playing up the melodrama of a scene. I think of bringing like bringing romance comics in the, I guess, 50s or into the 60s. But I really did like the couple of pages we get between Orion and Becca.
Yeah,
When he shows Becca his true face, I thought that was like really well done. Did not seem like it was the same comic as the rest of Hunger
right.
Dogs, but really well put together scene, well constructed. Um, yeah, I thought that was like a really great bright spot in this between the two of them. Um,
Yeah.
but in any event,
No, I think I 100% agree with that. Uh, the only caveat would be there's that one splash page with the extreme close up of Orion that is clearly not inked by Mike Royer, that you're sort of like, ooh.
yeah,
So, and Becca's, yeah, like it is interesting that even Year says that, is it because it really is clear as you flip through it. It's like, oh yeah, that's not, that page was, you know. Anyway, unfortunately, guys, I'm gonna have to get off. So, if y'all want to continue, that's
Well,
cool.
then
But
we're at a good point, I think.
Hmm.
I think we'll almost certainly wind up returning to Kirby at some point, but for the next 3 months, I think 3 issues apiece of the Kree Skrull War. Roy Thomas and a series of artists um, from roughly the same time, and somehow none of us
Like,
have ever actually read it.
well, this has been great. I finally
Yeah,
managed to get through the omnibus. Uh,
the doorstop. I
the
mean, I have a number of doorstops, so I say that lovingly.
I do have the complete DC Ditko omnibus to go through now. So,
Oh, what did Ditko do at DC?
Creeper,
Creeper,
Okay.
yeah,
Shade the Changing Man,
Ooh,
which is what I've been reading in it.
all
yeah.
right.
Hawk
Yeah.
and Dove,
Okay.
and a lot of a lot of horror, like mystery
Yeah,
stories.
Yeah, okay.
yeah. It
Well,
was I last story. Then I gotta go. But that on the Ditko Facebook page, somebody had put up a letter, the letters to Ditko thing, and Sean's already laughing because he saw it. It's like some guy had sent Steve a letter, and he's like, "I would really love an autograph or maybe a piece of original art, just a stick figure or something." And he sends him back like a page of just like, why should you deserve this? Why should I give this to you? It's like, it's the full-on objectivist Ditko, like, I
right.
don't owe you anything. And then it gets to the end and he just put SD because it's like, no, you don't get a signature. Fuck
I don't know. I
you.
mean, in many collector circles, that might be worth more than if he had given him a
I
regular
was,
piece.
yeah, we were talking about that. I was like, do you know how excited I would be to own that? I would
Yeah.
just
Right.
be
I mean,
over the moon.
have you guys seen the kid who wrote to Steve Martin? Oh no, John Cleese. Someone wrote to John Cleese asking for an autograph. And John Cleese wrote back this whole thing about how he's too important to respond to those sorts of things, and then signs a
Uh,
Oh, I love this guy.
for
That's
Mark
great.
Pratt, Sean Harklerode, and Jimmy Gaspero, this has been the Fourth World Book Club. We're going to have to come up with a new name soon on 22 panels, and we will see you after the next page.